Live stream audio test, 1, 2. Live stream audio test, 1, 2. Live stream audio test, 1, 2, 1, 2.
We get started, please. Michael. Good evening, everybody. Can we make a start then? Welcome. It's a pity we're missing the first sunny evening for this that we've had for about 3 months. So I'd like to welcome everybody to this face-to-face meeting. Do we have anybody online tonight? Not that you know of. Okay, so we've got nobody joining us online tonight. The meeting is live on the internet and a recorded version will be available to view within 48 hours on the North Somerset Council website. There's no public participation. And I think this is the first meeting I've chaired where there's been no public participation. Is that a good sign or a bad sign? I'll leave you to decide. Apologies for absence.
Chairperson, Councillors Coles and Snaden.
Thank you. Declaration of disclosable pecuniary interest from anybody? No. Minutes of the last meeting. Leader.
Move approval, Chair.
Seconder? Catherine. All in favour? That's carried. Thank you. I have no announcements tonight. I know that may be surprising. Moving on to item 6, could I call on Councillor Roger Whitfield to present the Adult Social Services and Housing Commissioning Intentions 2024-25. There are 3 recommendations here, so I'd like you to look at the recommendations as Roger talks to the paper so that when we come to some sort of agreement, you know what we're looking at. Roger, over to you. Where is he?
Thank you, Chair. Okay, this report sets out the planned delivery of adult social services and housing commissioning intentions and priorities for the coming 18 months. The new Procurement Act that takes effect in autumn this year requires us to have an 18-month pipeline. The commissioning plan could have just concentrated on the larger contracts that required a decision by full council. However, we felt it was important to outline all the services, regardless of value, to ensure that we continue to demonstrate our core values of openness and transparency. The commissioning intentions for 2024-25 have been developed in consultation with the Adult Social Services Director, Assistant Director for Commissioning, Partnerships and Housing Solutions, and the relevant heads of services, as well as the procurement team. In addition, extensive consultation has been undertaken with the development of the Adult Social Care and Housing Commissioning Strategy, which is fundamental to the annual commissioning intentions report. This has included, where appropriate, consultation across the wider BNSSG system and integrated locality partnerships. The Adult Services and Housing Policy and Scrutiny Panel were also consulted on the 21st of March this year. The services considered in this commissioning intentions report meet our statutory requirements and as such are covered by the Care Act 2014, the Health and Care Act 2022, the Mental Capacity Act 2005, the Mental Health Act 1983 as amended in 2009, the Housing Act 1996, the Homeless Reduction Act 2017, the Housing Grants Construction and Regeneration Act 1996, and where appropriate, the Children's and Families Act 2014. Appendix A lists all of the new services that are due in the next 18 months, and Appendix B lists existing and previously agreed activity. These appendices demonstrate the sheer number of services that are delivered in this area, services that many people don't realise are supplied by North Somerset Council. In publishing these commissioning intentions, we expect that they will be used by potential service providers to assist them in designing the services that the residents of North Somerset require. This will lead to a healthy and more competitive market in these areas, and therefore seeks to avoid the cliff edge of price escalation that has been experienced by many other local authorities. There are many areas where we commission services for preventative work to help keep people at home and healthy. The Care Quality Commission will also want to know that we have robust plans in place for delivery and procurement when they undertake their inspection work. I am therefore looking to seek approval to commence specific procurement activities or to extend contracts beyond their original term, specifically to agree the adult social care and housing commissioning intentions for the next 18 months, to approve the commencement of activities listed in appendices A and B, delegating to the Director for Adult Social Care approval to determine the relevant procurement or commissioning routes, and the award of any contract in consultation with the relevant executive members, and to approve the activity listed in appendices A and B for the extension of any contracts that have already reached their term under the original permission to commence a procurement. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Mark? Thank you, Mark. Open for questions, debates. So, Nigel, you were first. Would you like to go first?
Yeah, a clarification, please. I was a bit surprised to see that this report has no direct financial relevance, as it covers about £140 million worth of contracts, which is the biggest expenses council has. So then I assumed that this was just setting the start of the procedure, the process, until I then read that actually the recommendation is to implement and to extend some of the contracts. So when do the details of all these contracts ever get scrutinised?
Do you want to answer each
So
one?
I'm asking the exec member, not the director.
Roger, do you want to answer that now, or?
I would like the exec member to answer that.
Yeah, no, I'll have to come back with an answer to that question. I don't have the information with me at the moment.
So you'll create an answer at a later date and send it round.
Yes.
Thank
Well,
you.
Presumably, we won't take a decision then until we know when it's going to be scrutinised. Because there doesn't seem to be any provision over the next 18 months of these contracts when they're starting for £140 million worth of commitment to this council for any scrutiny to take place on specific contracts. This started off by saying it was just start of the process, but actually we're giving permission to actually agree the contracts.
I think the leader would like to come in here.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course, and it's a perfectly legitimate question. Obviously, this report is setting out the commissioning intentions for the service over the coming period. It is not setting out the individual arrangements that are going to be entered into, which will go through our normal commissioning and procurement routes. So where they are at the appropriate level for reporting through to the exec member or to the executive or to full council, that will still happen. We're not signing off the detail of every single one of these proposals at this point. It is setting out the broad commissioning intentions for this service. So there will be opportunity to scrutinise the individual contracts where they are extended or renewed in line with our existing contract standing orders arrangements.
That's what I assumed it meant, Mike, but then it does say to determine the relevant procurement commissioning routes and the award of any contract in consultation with relevant exec members. So where does that award of contract include scrutiny?
Again, I mean, I would just refer you to what I've just said. It's in line with our established contract standing orders. So there'll be a delegated decision to the exec member where that is appropriate for the sign-off. That's obviously subject to referral to the relevant policy and scrutiny panel as part of the normal process. So there's nothing unusual in this or different to what we've done before. I think it's also worth noting that we've always brought this document and the commissioning intentions document before full council, and this was signed off last year too.
I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that we can actually call something in when we see the details of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to assure you, where it is at the appropriate threshold for an exec member decision, the normal call-in and scrutiny arrangements will absolutely apply. You're not signing in blood tonight, Nigel, with no chance to come back and ask further questions. And I would absolutely encourage all members to engage with the Adult Services and Housing Policy and Scrutiny Panel, which has been doing good work to review many of these services and obviously speak to the exec member if they've got further detailed questions or concerns.
Thank you. Helen, I think you're next.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Roger, I'm happy for you to answer this or for the relevant director. I've just got a couple of questions. I mean, I think the report really shows the breadth of what we deliver in terms of adult social services, doesn't it? You know, the huge list in the table after the report. But as per usual, I'm very interested in any opportunities we've got for providing more services in-house and whether there are any opportunities specifically in adult social care for that. And I'm also very interested in whether the council has considered writing payment of the real living wage into contracts which involve staff. More and more adult social care providers are finding that they need to pay that slightly increased rate. I think it's a 56p difference currently. The real living wage is £12 an hour, whereas the national living wage is £11.44. So yeah, that's my second question. Has the council considered that? So that's my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Roger.
Right. Excuse me. Yeah, I believe that the council constantly looks at the levels of wages with the people that we contract with, and I'm not 100% if we've agreed that yet. But with the ones we contract with for care services, we have agreed the real living wage. Yes, so we have. And sorry, could you just remind me what the first one was?
That's about, are we looking at opportunities for providing more of these services in-house rather than outsourcing them to private and voluntary sector organisations? Well, they're already outsourced, aren't they?
Yeah, so I think that's part of our normal commissioning and procurement strategy, to look and see whether or not we go in-house or out-house. And I do press on this and make sure that we are looking at both routes. So yes, if there is an opportunity to bring it in-house and it's financially viable to do so, then that would be something that we would look at.
Thank you. Do you want to sum up, Roger, and then we'll take a vote? No, you're okay? Could we take a vote on the three recommendations as in the paper? All those in favour? All those agree? Thank you. And against? Abstentions? There are some abstentions. It's carried. Sorry about that. Right, item 7, the Climate Emergency Strategy and Action Plan and Progress Report. There's much data included in here. This is an update. We're not debating new projects or new activities or suggesting the council should now take on something different. This is an update on what is happening so far and the progress against the actions that have been agreed previously. So I will ask you not to try and treat this as bringing in the next 20 projects you would like the council to adopt. So sorry about that, Anoka, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Right, I'm very pleased to present the Climate Emergency Strategy and Action Plan update and the Adaptation Strategy. Members will have seen that much of our progress is on track, but at the same time we do have some areas of concern. And this is what the report outlines. So some of our councils own estate and fleet, and the decarbonisation of the built environment and energy generation have been flagged up as some cause for concern. However, there is also good news to be shared in each of these areas. So in our own estate buildings, for instance, we were awarded a £2.3 million PSDS funding for Hatton Moor, which will reduce our footprint by 300 tonnes CO2 equivalents per year. Our own estate fleet as well, you'll all have seen in the news, no doubt, I'm telling you nothing new here. The EV mobile library, which has been approved, we had a grant for that for £306,000, and we won a big bid for 24 electric buses, which also includes the electrification of the bus depot, which is, a hugely positive step forward. In the built environment, we've had real success with Solar Together, and I'm really proud to say that because of all the 4 districts that are involved in Solar Together, North Somerset had the highest number of applicants by far, which I think is real credit to the staff involved in advertising that particular programme to our residents. Our peat restoration project is not new, but I do want to say that it's well underway by now, and I believe that the tenders are being gathered at the minute, so we will hope to have more of an update on that in the autumn. And as far as energy generation is concerned, in February we appointed a new energy manager. And the energy manager is busy drafting an energy strategy for us, and this will form part of our net zero pathway. Reduction in Scope 1 and 2 decarbonisation is making good progress, but we still feel that the pace of the reduction is too slow. However, it's not really for want of trying, but to some extent this is, of course, due to lack of investment by government. And that's slowing councils down all over the country. That's not just us. I'd like to talk a bit more about the climate adaptation strategy, if I may. This strategy is largely based on reports from the IPCC, from the UK's government, Climate Change Committee and the Met Office, and it also makes use of the local climate adaptation tool, which has been developed by the University of Exeter and the Alan Turing Institute and others. So lots of detail have gone into those reports, and they've churned out lots of information, which means that here in North Somerset, we can expect in the near future much warmer and drier summers, wetter and warmer winters, and more extreme weather events, including devastating flooding and sea level rises. Now, I know that these all sound like scary predictions, and we've talked about them before, but the reality is that 1.5 Celsius has already been breached, and we've just had 18 months of record rainfall. And that rainfall has led to all sorts of issues. We've had flooding. Only last week we had serious flooding in Weston and Clevedon, which I'm reliably told was worse than was expected or predicted. And flooding has a major impact on the deterioration of our roads. 18 months of excessive rain means, and we've all complained about this, lots of potholes everywhere have arrived in places where we never had them before. And it's worth pointing out, I know that we all like to complain about potholes, and I'm one of the worst to complain about potholes, but they cannot be repaired when the roads are wet. So, if we have excessive wet weather, that's going to have an impact on our roads, and it's going to have an impact on what we can do about fixing them. Other areas have talked about coastal erosions. Farmers are reporting that they're unable to plant crops, and that raises issues over food security and further price increases. And all of these things are really serious and will affect the most vulnerable the most. So it's only right that we should prepare and protect our residents, but especially those most vulnerable. Now, we have a draft adaptation strategy here for you to look at and for you to read, and every adaptation plan must begin with assessing risk. So that goes from low to medium to high, but also from short term to medium to long term. So the document presented here today is a draft document, and if approved, it will be a living document, which will always be under development. It will be monitored and scrutinised throughout. I'm sure you'll have seen it contains a very large number of risks identified that need more action, because when you flick through the document, there's an awful lot of highlighted in red, which again is terribly worrying. It's clear to me, and I'm sure it is to most of us, if not all of us, that many of these risks can only be tackled properly with government legislation, financial support and funding programmes to facilitate the necessary adaptation, whether that is in insulating our homes, in managing flood risk, expanding the tree canopy to create shade in urban areas, etc. So with the elections on the horizon, I think we can all agree there's very little chance of anything forthcoming at the minute, but we cannot wait. And so we must do what we can, given the constraints of our budgets and our capacity. So over the next few months, we will continue to develop this adaptation strategy, and I will work very closely together with colleagues on the executive and with officers to further assess the risk. And I do, however, want to finish on a more positive note. One of the focus areas in our recent peer review was the climate emergency and how we have handled the work on the climate emergency. And the peer review results have commended North Somerset Council for that particular work and said we did extremely well, and that we were in some areas, if not in many of them, really quite far advanced. And I think, again, it is a credit to all the work that has gone on over the last few years that that recommendation came through. They've also suggested that over the next few months we should review our climate targets and refresh the related priorities to reflect the evidence base and available opportunities for us to work with partners. I'm really pleased to say that we have already started work on that, and I've had follow-up meetings with staff to discuss what opportunities we have to working with partners, and we have some plans in place that are being developed at the moment for a series of roundtable workshops with a wide range of partners to happen in May, June time. Now, finally, I'm very nearly there, trust me. I'm very aware that this document lists a lot of identified risk and actions, and in the months ahead we will be reviewing the way in which we report on the climate adaptation strategy, because what I'd really like to do in the future is to share with members examples of how exactly we implement those action priorities in practice, because I think that would be a very positive way of looking at the work that we do. So for now, I'd like to ask members to accept the recommendations in this report. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Thank you. So over to members. Do you have questions to our executive members? So there's Helen. Would you like to be first? I can't see what the hands.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Waite. You know, it's a very lengthy, detailed report, isn't it? And it really does show us the enormity of the task ahead of us. And as you quite rightly point out, you know, lots of things that we need to do are going to need much more support from the government. But I'm just wondering if, given that, and, you know, what you said about we're waiting for what happens as a result of the general election, is what sort of communications are we doing with, you know, our residents to try and encourage them to, you know, to do certain things. I mean, I was interested, for instance, I didn't realise we had this. We've got a thermal imaging camera that we can, people can hire and, you know, point at their houses and see where all the energy's coming out. So I had no idea we had such a thing, and that could be hired. So my question really is about the comms we're doing.
Thank you for that. I agree. I think the comms is a really difficult thing, because we are definitely here in an age now where if we do things online, we're going to be missing out some people who are not going to get those messages, because not everybody lives online and in our online world. I think it's very difficult for us to get those messages out to everybody. I think one of the things that we're looking at is whether we can use other methods of communication through other networks. So, for instance, our towns and parish councils, we're developing a better programme of activities with those and information sharing, because actually our town and parish councils have their own responsibility of sharing that level of news. So I think we're definitely looking at different ways in which we can get those messages out. But the bit about the thermal imaging has actually been on the website. It's also been reported in a number of different places, and so yeah, but it's difficult.
Just me not seeing it then. Sorry.
Thank you. So Chris Blades, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Commendable, the report as it is, and I must admit that one of the biggest problems you find is, even though it's commendable, most of the things that we're leading it with are coming from massive grants, and it's worrying that if those grants run out, where we go with all this, we're headlong into 2030. I mean, it doesn't appear that we're going to get anywhere near it like this, which is fair enough. A lot of governments and a lot of countries aren't doing the same. But the adaptation strategy considers climate protection, flood risk, heat vulnerability and economic impacts. It's the economic impacts on our people that I think we should be studying just as much as the economic impacts on climate change or what climate change might bring, or climate, more to the point, climate adaptation. I'm not a believer of climate change, but I do believe that we need climate adaptation because it is changing. Well, anthropological climate change I don't believe in, definitely. So what I'd like this report, as it's just a work in motion report, to consider in the future is the economic impacts of what we actually do against climate change, to actually consider the economic impacts on plus and minus on our own people, especially North Somerset, our taxpayers, on how we mix that in what we're actually doing. Because if you take electronic vehicles, for example, our whole fleet is going that way, and the vehicle market around the world is tanked in the last month. And if it keeps tanking, then you might have to reassess what we do with electric vehicles. I mean, a lot of them are lying in gardens rotting already. I mean, that's a sad fact, and it's unfortunate, but we might have to mitigate for our own policies soon at the way things are going. I mean, I hope we don't, but it's a sad fact. So the economic impacts aren't just about climate change. The economic impacts are about the taxpayer and how we mix that within our climate adaptation. So if you could take that on board as this evolves, then I think that's quite a serious, it has some serious implications. I mean, a lot of people are actually pushing back from 2030 already, governmental-wise. So I think that would be a very valid thing to actually present to the council and the taxpayers of this region. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I think it's a very valid comment that the points you make about investment and our local economy is very, very valid. Then that's both in relation to our residents and also to the businesses who are based here. So any of these issues that we're having with flooding or heating or whatever are going to affect all the businesses in this area. And I know that a lot of work is being done on that already, and I'm quite certain that we will be very seriously looking at the impact of climate change on our local economy. And I think also the energy strategy that's being developed is very much in line with that. So, you know, and I know that that's in its very early days because, as I said, the energy manager is only appointed in February. But there will be a strategy coming forward, an energy strategy, and that will very much be looking at the impact of all of these things on the local communities and on our businesses. So I'm absolutely certain we'll be picking that up. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Bird?
Yep, thank you. First, I'd like to thank the executive officer, executive member and officers for all the effort they put into this report and the huge amount of time that's given to it. As a North Somerset Council, we have a very limited budget which restricts what we can achieve. And that obviously impacts on the time and effort of our officers and limits what they can achieve. With that in mind, I still find this report a bit too much navel-gazing, as my gran used to say. In the long term, us making North Somerset Council itself carbon neutral will have little influence on the effects of climate change across North Somerset. Where would our efforts be more productive and be better spent and have a greater impact on climate change and protecting the residents of North Somerset? In the briefing notes, I'm pleased Simon has managed to bring together DEFRA and the Environment Agency to actually try and achieve some coordinated approach to the problems North Somerset has as a result of climate change. Although there's a lot of attention in the briefing given to the assets, i.e. flood defences and keeping our water channels clear and the maintenance of them. What concerns me here, this is mostly about what should have been happening already. There seems not to be much thought about further actions against rising sea levels and climate change. Even with our sea defences and waterways well maintained, they are only designed to deal with historic challenges. As sea level rises, so declines our ability to drain our moors and therefore our ability to stop flooding. And our challenges here will only increase. So when do we stop navel-gazing and fully concentrate on the oncoming threats to the whole of North Somerset, give over manpower to encourage farmers to set their low-lying land to biodiversity net gain, and to realise there will come a time when perhaps we have to give the Somerset levels back to nature. I fully support everything in this report, but we need as a council to see that it isn't simply going to be enough, and we need to give more manpower to the cause. Thank you.
Thank you. Amika?
Thank you very much for that. I fully appreciate the concerns that are expressed here, and I think, in an ideal world, there would be an awful lot of other things that we would be doing right now, particularly in relation to peat restoration and a number of other actions that we would be taking. There is a finite amount of money available to us at the moment, and I do think that it's quite difficult for us to pick up some of the things that you and I both agree we really should be doing. I'd really like to ask you to meet with me outside the meeting sometime with some of the officers so that we could have a really good discussion, also take in the new peat restoration project and talk about that in a little bit more detail, and then we'll see how far we can get. Thank you very much.
Thank you. James McKillen? James McKillen? Sorry.
Sorry, Madam Chairman, to the second to recognise
You've
that.
got a second name now.
I've been called worse. Thank you. So just to really to build on that theme, really. So just to sort of a hopefully helpful suggestion for next steps in terms of where we identify risks that we believe are beyond the council's control and mitigations potentially that we can't afford, are we able to articulate those so that whoever forms the next government or parties form the next government, we can hopefully go to them with a shopping list along with other councils of these are the kinds of actions that need to be done now and this is what they're going to cost?
Thank you for that, Stuart. Absolutely. We already have plans for the next few months to have a really good review of all the priorities that we've identified and all the actions that we feel are key actions, and to also review some of our targets and work out a list of things, that we really mustn't not do, and things that, that perhaps are slightly less important. But I think having a targeted list like that and a shopping list would be a really good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Bridger now.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Waite, for the report, which obviously I welcome. You talked about flood risk. I think there are 60 references to flood or flooding in the report. What we do about it, obviously, which is very challenging. What arguably we don't have is a team within the council proportionate to that risk, and this follows very much on from Councillor Bird's point. We had a good session at the last TCC Policy and Scrutiny panel. We invited 3 members, 3 reps from the Environment Agency to that meeting. I think Simon Bunn he's got 2.5 full-time equivalent in his team, and one of the members from the EA had 88 in his team. Obviously, that's what they do. And obviously, we are very much partners with the EA in what they do. The officers obviously do stand up the flood risk operational group, the cross-council officer group, in response to flooding events. But I think this is something we really do need to look at in the context of the MTFP. I know the challenges. We all know what the challenges are, but does the flood risk team need to have a slightly wider remit? I think that might need to, is something perhaps we need to look at, because this is, it's just going to get more and more important, isn't it, to us all? But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bridget, for that support. I think that's really welcome, and I think that's something that definitely we share the same concern with. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think Councillor Peter Crew.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Points already been covered.
Excellent, Peter. Do you want to sum up? No? Sorry, Miss Marcia, sorry, missed you there.
Thank you. There's a side issue, and you may say, but in the scheme of things, this isn't so important. But those in the rural area often insure their property through NFU. And for at least 8 years now, they have said they will not insure any property in Weston-super-Mare because of the flood risk. Maybe at the moment they're the only ones, but I had a bit of a shock. A couple of days ago, I was shown a renewal notice someone received. They live in a very small cottage, and their insurance policy with a different company had been £430 a year, with very gradual increases. Their new renewal was £1,460. Now, I mean, that's several £100%. So I think this is a problem which is going to fall on householders, and I don't know the answer to it.
I'm not sure what you can say about that, but have a
No,
go.
well, what I will say is that I also don't have the answer to that, but it does fit very well into all the concerns that I have about all of these things. And I've already thought about that, and all the reports that I've seen from other parts of the country, areas that are in flood risk zones, those issues are beginning to crop up, and there will be more of them as time goes on. And I think it fits really well into the discussion we had earlier about the local economy and about things that we do need to be aware of as a council, because those things are going to affect all our residents. But thank you for raising it, because it is an important issue. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think Councillor Mike Solomon, you wanted to come in here?
Put this on. Just a point of clarification on Marcia's comment about not insuring residents. It's residential, they insure businesses, because my daughter's business is with the NFU, so it must be only residential.
Thank you for that comment. Have I got Catherine? Oh. Councillor Catherine Givens?
Don't worry, I'll be quick. Thank you for the report, and obviously we've discussed this quite often. I just wanted to ask you whether, as your colleague Councillor Petty and I did once, whether you'd be up for presenting this refreshed action plan to some of our schools and educational establishments again, because I think it's really important that we get our young people to consider careers, the green skills agenda, and just to get an idea of what our schools are doing to promote that as an area of work in the future. So it's just, I'm sure we're happy to work together on that and to get your assurance that you are.
I'd be absolutely delighted. In fact, I was very disappointed that I've been in post for very nearly 10 months and nobody's asked me yet. So I'd be absolutely delighted. Thank you.
I'm sure Catherine will be on the case. Every school now will be asking you. I think now, would you like to sum up?
I think my only summing up is that I think I've said all the things I really wanted to say. I think it's a really important document, but we will be coming back in future months with further updates that I would like to be slightly more targeted towards the actions that we are taking to address some of these risks. But other than that, thank you.
Thank you. So all those in favour of accepting the recommendations, which is supporting the plan and noting progress, all those in favour? Thank you. All those against? All those abstaining? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, America. Item 8, the corporate parenting report. I'd like to welcome Jackie Scott at the end there, who is our new virtual school head. I think Catherine will want to say a little more, and I think Jackie's going to be presenting this part, a short report on this.
Yes, thank you. As ever, this is the regular corporate parenting spot, and as I keep telling everyone, we are corporate parents, and I'm sure you've read the report, so I won't be going into the data. As Wendy told me to be brief and punchy, I'll do my best. So part of our role, obviously, is to advocate for our children in care and care-experienced young people, and particularly ensure that their educational needs are met and their voices are heard within the educational system. We all know that education for children gives them the knowledge and skills they need to take control of their own lives and their futures and help them make informed decisions and pursue opportunities. School provides a sense of routine and stability for children in care and care-experienced young people who may have experienced very disrupted living situations and challenging circumstances. It can offer a familiar environment, friendship, a sense of belonging, It builds self-esteem and develops valuable social skills. Now, we all know that a good education opens doors to all sorts of opportunities, including higher education, better job prospects, and overall improved life outcomes. And it can nurture resilience in our children in care and provide a pathway to a better future. So, for all of us as parents and corporate parents, we know that investing in the education of children in care and care-experienced young people is fundamental to support their growth, development, well-being, and opportunity to thrive. So here in North Somerset, children in care, like elsewhere, face unique challenges that can impact on their educational experiences. We, as North Somerset and as corporate parents, play a crucial role in supporting these children to make sure they get the necessary assistance to excel. And I'm pleased to have Jackie Scott here today to take you through the report and put some meat on the bones and give it more impactful. She's a talented and experienced head teacher and is the head of our virtual school here in North Somerset, which, as I'm sure you all know, is a dedicated education service that has within its remit the focus on supporting the academic achievement and well-being of children in care and care-experienced young people. Its goal is to ensure that these people get the necessary educational support and guidance to reach their full potential. The virtual school offers personalised support for each child in care, recognising their unique strengths, their challenges and their educational needs. And it works closely with schools, social workers, foster carers and other professionals. This personalised learning plans for each child in care address their specific educational needs, learning styles and areas where they need extra support, and the plans are regularly reviewed and updated to reflect the child's progress and achievements, which of course are noted in the tables in the report, so I'm not going to talk to the data. I'm not going to go on any longer because we have Jackie here, and just to note that she plays a vital role in heading up virtual school, has really worked hard to start transforming it and improving it, and let's commend her for its vital role in improving outcomes for vulnerable children. So I will hand over to Jackie now, and I will say that we were planning to have some slides, but we don't for all sorts of reasons, but they will be sent out to you after we've discussed. So Jackie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for that introduction, Catherine, and welcome. So I am the head teacher for the virtual school here in North Somerset, and as Catherine touched on, we're not an actual school with classrooms or tables or chairs or whiteboards, but rather we look after all the children who come into care when they're in North Somerset. Now, about 70% of those children stay in North Somerset, but some of them go across the border to South Gloss, Somerset, Baines, and a few go as far afield. We've got somebody up in Shropshire, we've got somebody in Cornwall, and I'm going to London next month to visit one of our children in care. So we are a school role, not a school, and then we are responsible for the right provision for the children and for high outcomes. So in terms of the right provision, mainstream school suits many children, but some children it doesn't suit, and that's similar for our children in care. So here in North Somerset, we've got 3 really good special schools, and some of our children in care we support to attend those schools. Some children need a residential placement and some children need alternative provision. So one of our children in year 11, a young man, coming up to 16, one of his care placements has broken down. He's finding school a bit tricky. So we've got him in a provision where he's learning to plaster, he's learning a trade. So by the time he leaves school at 16, he'll have had a slightly different experience, but he'll have learned a trade, he'll get his GCSEs alongside that, and that will give him aspiration and opportunity as he goes through life. With the high expectations, that's, as Catherine's talked about, the personal education plans. That's part of us as a virtual school and my team being in schools and ensuring that the outcomes and the expectation for the children are high. And as Catherine said, we do that through our PEPs, our personal education plans. And as virtual head, I monitor those and I look through those and I can see some of the successes and some of the ways that schools are doing really well to support their children. And we're not talking about data tonight, and you will put that up in the report and in the slides. But I think hopefully tonight I'll give you an idea of how qualitatively we are supporting our children to do well and do better than they could do if they weren't supported. So I want to talk to you about some of the challenges that our children face and give you some examples of how, as a virtual school, we can help them. So we had a family of four siblings, all primary age, who went into care on a Friday evening. So they were picked up from the school in Weston by Children's Social Care, and they went about 10 miles north of the county. And so that night they were with strangers to them, carers, and they left their school. They didn't manage to say goodbye to friends and family, teachers, and they found themselves with a carer. Now, the good point to this is it's quite hard to get a carer for four siblings, so that was a real positive. And then we worked hard to bring them back to their Western school, to say goodbye to their peer group, to their teachers, and to get them into a new school quite quickly, because you cannot finish school on a Friday and pick up on a new school again on Monday morning. So we worked really hard on that transition, and those four siblings are really thriving in their new placement. I think it's important to think about transitions as well when children transition to start at primary school, the transition to secondary, even within a secondary school, the choosing of GCSEs, and then the transition post-16. And that's part of our work to support transitions with our children in care, because remember, they may have many, many more transitions than children who aren't in care when they switch placements. So if you think about maybe a year 2 child does the Vikings, they move school, and their new school, they do Vikings in year 3, so they've done the Vikings twice and they've missed the Romans. Or maybe a child in year 7 doing French, they move school and the new school does Spanish. Perhaps a child taking options, successfully settled into child development. Again, placement breakdown, new school doesn't do the same options. So we have an inclusion officer, and that's her role, to get into schools when children are transitioning from one school to another out of the normal transition points, and support children and support those schools. So for one example of that, we've got a young man, he's only 6 actually, he's in primary school, he's had a SEND need, he's not been in school for 6 weeks. So our inclusion officer has been around weekly to support that young man, and he actually started in his primary school today, and the support carries on so he can succeed in primary and have that trusted, known adult. Some of our children have SEND, and most of them have experienced trauma as children in care. We're fortunate in the virtual school team to have 2 qualified SENCOs, one being myself and my secondary advisor, and we're running trauma training for our schools so they can better support needs. And I think it's important that you realise the differences that are experienced by children when they go into care. Suddenly they've got different knives, different forks, different food, different bedtimes, different boundaries, and that can be terrifying for a child who's been taken from their parents for good reasons, but suddenly they feel very, very different. They will have a social worker who will go into school, they'll have additional appointments, they'll have a new family home, they might get transported to their school via taxi, and Christmas is never going to be the same for those children in care. So part of the work we do is try and celebrate our children in care and the work they do in schools, and we give a monthly award to celebrate the work and to try and make them feel part of their school environment. Lots of children in care post-16 start to face financial pressures when they live alone, and I know they've talked to some of our counsellors about that. And let's remember the statistic that only 12% of children in care go to university. So I was delighted we have a few of our care leavers going to university. One particular young lady went into care in year 10. It's really supportive foster carer. She's now at Plymouth University in her second year doing English literature and can return home to that carer in holiday times, which is really going over and above for a child in care. And not to forget about our unaccompanied asylum seekers, normally post-16, who are facing completely different language, culture, may be facing the prospect of never seeing their parents again. So we work with those children as well, and I'll be going to London on the trip with our unaccompanied asylum seekers on Thursday. When you see our report and look at some of our stats, you will see that our attendance drops off in year 10 and year 11, but we are absolutely passionate about our children leaving with qualifications. We've got one young lady who went into care in year 8, experienced severe trauma, couldn't be in a school, had to be in secure accommodation for her own safety, and now she's going to finish in year 11 with a qualification called ASDAM, which is a vocational qualification. It's not GCSE equivalent, but a qualification nonetheless. Another young lady in year 8, her trauma really manifested when she went into care in year 7, wasn't in school for a year, and now we've got her tutoring for 15 hours a week. And I read the tutoring reports, and this young lady's really thriving now, doing the curriculum English, Maths, Science, and then yoga and food tech. I think as children get older and they face the thought of their futures looking uncertain, it can be they become anxious and fearful of going to school. So one of our year 11s has become very anxious in the run-up to GCSE. So one of my advisors will check in with her every evening, check in her at 8:30, and if she's not in for GCSEs, get her a taxi into school. So we really are working hard to go over and above to ensure that our children in care get similar opportunities and can achieve the outcomes that children not in care can. And you can see those outcomes, you can have a look at those on the report. And we have 16 year 11 this year, and they are all receiving some form of education. So finally, I just want to round up by talking to you about a few of the interventions we're putting in place. We do get a small government grant that we can allocate to schools 3 times a year as part of the PEP process. And we can allocate additional monies, which we encourage our schools to apply for to enhance experiences in school and give a better opportunity. So we're giving about £1,500 to a young lady in one of our schools in year 11 so she can have intense tutoring, so she can get good grades at her GCSEs to go to A-levels. As I mentioned, we're doing a vocational qualification ASDAN for all of our year 11s who are struggling to attend mainstream schools. Another example, we have a young man in Harrow who is really struggling in school because he's not sure whether he will be deported, and we're working incredibly hard with the school, meeting them weekly, saying, as Catherine said, this is your safe space, this is where he needs to be nurtured and looked after, and we're working with the school to keep that place. Our inclusion officer does tutoring for our year 11s, particularly in maths, and we will be tutoring one of our young men through the summer holidays in maths. So although he won't be able to sit his maths with his peers this year, he can take the resit in November and start a course in construction. We've got one young lady who is going to Kenya. She has been washing cars and baking cakes, and she's going on a community project, volunteering for 2 to 3 weeks for a cost of £5,000. She didn't think she'd be able to go. We've been able to make a donation. She's worked hard herself, and she will indeed be going to Kenya and having that life-changing experience, and that is one of our children in care. So in terms of, if you're sitting here thinking, what could you do to help? Probably quite a lot. You may be a school governor who can keep children in care high on agendas and on committee meetings in the schools where you support. You may have a teaching background, and you may be able to offer support to our children in care through our volunteer programme. You may be a business owner who can give a chance for an opportunity for work experience, and you may be able to support other local business owners with understanding the trauma that children in care face and the additional support they may need to succeed. When we have our celebration events, which we will publicise, you would be very welcome to attend and celebrate with us. But you may just be a community member who is interested and wants to know more and come and talk to us, and you would be very welcome at our virtual school meetings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jackie, for all those very profound examples of how the virtual school is helping our young people. I don't think there's any summing up, and I think it's just to note the report, unless anybody wants to ask Jackie anything.
Yes, if anyone does, I just want to thank you again, Jackie, for putting some flesh on the bones and having those examples, real examples of what our young people are going through and how we seek to help them, because I don't think we can underestimate some of the challenges and the trauma that some of the young people have faced.
Mike, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I don't want to put Jackie on the spot, but she said that 12% of children in care go on to university. What percentage of children not in care go on to university? Do you have that figure to hand, out of interest?
I don't have that figure to hand, no.
Well, I googled it, and it's 47, but I just wanted to see if you had a different figure to that.
I would have
it's
guessed
47%.
50%, so yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the other statistic worth noting is that 27% of our of 27% of the prison population are care leavers, and I think that's shocking.
Thank you. Any other questions? So thank you to Jackie and Catherine, and we note the report. So thank you, everybody. We have no petitions. So we move on to item 10 and Caritas. Charles, Councillor Caritas Charles, would you like to present your deliberate democracy motion? Which, of course, everybody has had to be able to look at.
I believe I need a number of councillors to support it being discussed, Chair.
Before you present your motion, do we have 7 people who would like to debate this? Thank you. We've got 7 plus. Okay, over to you, Caritas.
Thank you there we go. Thank you very much. And for those councillors with the councillor bingo card, Caritas is going to talk about community engagement. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So, thank you, councillors, for agreeing to debate.
Sorry, Caritas, can I interrupt? Right, I thought you had to have a seconder to start with, but you can introduce it now and then have a seconder, okay?
No problem. Okay, thank you again for allowing me to present this to you. Some of you that were here at the last administration will remember we declared a democratic emergency, which was another motion brought by myself. There is a lack of public confidence in the democratic process, but not necessarily in councillors. Recent local government association survey has highlighted that a large proportion, nearly 70% of the population, have faith in their local councillors, less than 7% in their local MPs, which is quite telling. Now, people are willing to engage and play a part in deliberating and informing decision makers. I did informal polls myself and door knocking and talked through processes for people to engage. And there is a real keenness within society as a whole. And we are seeing increasing uses of different ways to have deliberative democratic engagement. What am I proposing tonight isn't going to be a cure-all for all our engagement problems, but a petition to debate gives us a valuable engagement tool that gives us insight as councillors and enables the public to raise concerns at the highest level and, most of all, get answers. And I know many people sometimes say, well, that's what councillors are here for. We are representatives of the people. It won't take away that at all. We ultimately make the decisions. We will ultimately have the final say. But this helps us, in my opinion, make even more informed decisions. The second part of my motion is to complement the new engagement strategy that's being devised by North Somerset Council. And we have come on in leaps and bounds in public engagement. It may not look like it in the conversations that we have out in the community, but honestly, we have. We need to ensure that the public, in our ongoing efforts to improve engagement, have input into how they are engaged with and how they should be engaged with using deliberative processes. Deliberative democracy has been used to address issues as complex as abortion, democratic reform and climate emergency. And I sent round to all councillors some examples of the process in a document that I authored. These processes ensure informed debate and prevent any decisions being made by those who shout the loudest. Now, I received emails from a few councillors with regards to the threshold for debate, and I'm very open for councillors to discuss what they believe that should be. I made a proposal which is in line with our neighbouring authority, Bristol City Council, and I would have people bear in mind that that figure is for a city that is nearly double the population of the entire of North Somerset combined. So I think it's a reasonably fair limit, but people may want to negotiate up or downwards. And I have an upper limit and I have a lower limit in my head, but now I'm sure everyone else has something as well. Britain has a lot to learn in how we engage the public across the world. From Venezuela to France, Canada to Australia, governments at a local and national level are enshrining innovative public engagement into the heart of our governance. What I'm asking my fellow councillors tonight is that we take another step in our already well-progressed journey to innovation. I commend this motion to you. Thank you.
Thank you. So do you have a seconder? And I think I'm now going to move to the leader, who I think is going to propose an amendment.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And colleagues, Councillor Gibbons and I circulated a proposed revised wording, really totally in line with the spirit of the motion that Caritas has just moved, and which I really welcome as a positive contribution to the Council's commitment to being open and transparent and fair in everything that we do. I'm going to move the revised wording that was circulated, which just clarifies a few points set to enable officers to proceed with implementing a scheme if we decide to support that this evening. There's just a couple of additional points that I'd like to add. So the first is to thank Councillor Ellis for flagging that there is a typo in section 5 of the motion. So under this council resolves to, there's a than instead of a that, or the other way around, isn't it? Actually, there's a than instead of a that. Not critical to the meaning, but thank you, Councillor Ellis. And the other addition is, and in line with comments that Caritas has just made, and I know colleagues, particularly from the Green Group, were concerned about the threshold issue. I'm going to suggest that we also add that in addition to petitions triggering referral to full council, they could also trigger referral to policy and scrutiny panels, and that the threshold therefore would be 2,500 to trigger a full council debate and 500 signatures to trigger a debate at a policy and scrutiny panel. I think that would then offer a blended route for residents to access a debate at council that would be cognizant of the size and geography of the issue. Personally, just on the issue of the threshold, I think 1.5%, 2,500 electors is a reasonable target for a petition that is likely to have impact across North Somerset to aim for. And I think it's important to emphasise that ultimately this is in addition to all the existing channels that the council has and as we as elected members have. So it doesn't change the fact that residents can continue to come and talk to us, can continue to come and lobby us and participate in all of the other mechanisms that already exist. So I would move that recommendation, and Catherine, I know, is going to support that.
Yes, can I just briefly say, because I have clarified this with the solicitor, that, as Mike referred to, but I will articulate it for members of the community that have contacted me, that the mechanism we have for a councillor to deliver a small petition on behalf of local residents still exists. That won't change, as we've always been able to do that. So there was a fear that a small group, say, managed to get 200-300 signatures. That can still be presented to council by the councillor, and a ward issue can be looked into, or a wider issue can be looked into from that. So just that reassurance. And I'm happy to second the amendment. Thank you.
Caritas?
Hello, I was just going to say that I'm more than happy for Councillor Gibbons and Councillor Bell's amendment to become the substantive.
Thank you, Caritas. So do we vote on the amendment? Right, if Nicola also agrees, then we can go straight to the debate. Is that right? Thank you very much. So are you both happy? Thank you. So straight to the debate if you want to debate. Councillor Chris Blades?
Thank you, Chair. The only thing I'm worried about is if we have an influx of hundreds of petitions. I can't see it, but you never know. And all of a sudden we absorb a lot of time with officers, etc., etc. Is there any clawback just in case we've got the figures wrong? I mean, I think 2,500 does sound about right, but if we do get an influx of people and there's loads of cranky ideas all being petitioned, we could set off something we don't really want to happen. So can we put in a clawback in this just in case it does go completely wrong?
Caritas, would you like to reply to that?
I could give you an example. I'm currently monitoring a petition on car parking charges in Portishead, which you can't get any more controversial than that. And that's been going for nearly a month and has only achieved 1,600 signatures. It's actually really, really difficult to get a lot of people to sign up to these things. So I think you'll be surprised.
Thank you. Councillor Patrick Keating?
Thank you. A point of clarification, please, whether it's to Caritas or others. Throughout the text of the motion, it refers frequently to citizens, and I think we need to be aware that the people we represent in North Somerset are not all British citizens. So is it perhaps more apt to refer to residents throughout so we avoid being exclusionary?
Happy to change the wording, Caritas?
Yes, I would include them as citizens, even though they're technically not legally, but yes, that's fine.
I think the solicitor would like to come in on that.
In order to be easy to change the standing order, our current standing order for petitions is residents, business taxpayers, or elected people on the electoral roll. So I would keep those as the categories.
Thank you. Cartman?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Caritas, for this. I often think your motions are a bit like Marmite. I love them or hate them. I love this one, so you'll know that's a good thing on that one. I think you're right. We have a democratic crisis, and I think that's leading to climate crisis, NHS crisis, cost of living crisis. So we need to move on that, and anything we can do locally will be good, because nationally we have two parties that hog the debate and don't let anyone else say anything. So I think we need to open the debate locally. I do have 2 points, though. I don't know how we validate as someone as a local elector, because a lot of petitions are done on, I think you're running one. I mean, that's a question I think perhaps the solicitor may have an answer to. But my feel is 2,500 is too high, actually, because what are we scared of? I mean, we might get a couple of meetings where we get lots of petitions, so we come back and raise it back up. But if we start too high, we'll just get none. And so I think I would rather start low, and then perhaps picking up the point there, maybe if we do get a lot of pointless petitions, we can then reconsider, then start high and get nothing, and this just sinks into obscurity and the debate carries on as it has done in the past.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And again, I echo that. I think it's a great idea that you've put together here, and I'm very much in support. I think it's important to remember that we have now included, or Catherine Gibbons and Bell have now included the fact that we can get things to scrutiny. And let's not forget, scrutiny can then bring things to this council. So the reality is, if even with 500 signatures, we will now find a much easier way to highlight issues into council, particularly if the chair and members of that panel want to highlight it into council. So I think that is a really good addition, and it strengthens what you've put here on the table, not weakened it. And I think that only strengthens our democracy. And I do appreciate the recognition, which we're all striving for, that we're trying to be more open. Of course, when people don't agree with you, they say you're not talking to them. They just simply don't agree with you. So we all know that in this room. But, you know, well done.
Any answer, Caritas, or shall I move on to the next person?
No, carry on.
Thomas?
Thank you. Yeah.
Do you want to have a little rest to think about what you're going to say? Okay. Moving on. Peter Burden?
Thank you, Chairman. When I first read Caritas's motion, I thought to myself, do I really want to support this? purely because it seemed extremely long-winded to carry out what I think everybody should be able to do. And then I realised, thinking back over the years I've been involved with this council, it is harder and harder for an individual or a group of people to get anything discussed by this authority. We don't meet often enough. People don't know where we meet, they don't know when we meet. It wasn't that long ago that we had area committees that met locally in a region and people could turn up. I actually chaired one, and it caused chaos in some cases. When you get a serious issue, a lot of people turn up. You're doing things right if nobody turned up in that circumstance. We have a democratic deficit now, and it is because people don't know what we are doing, they don't understand what we are doing, and they don't know the constraints we work under. I happen to think the amendments brought forward by the Leader of Council, particularly with the move to allow it to come to scrutiny as well, is well worth trying. And I think keep this type of thing under review. I personally don't believe we'll get bombarded, but if Councillor Caritas has only got 1,500 on his petition for Portishead at the moment, I think that's probably due to lack of advertising, because I wasn't aware he was running one. Now, these things can certainly go up the chain. So, yeah, I will support this, and I think we have to find a way of making the public believe the council and the councillors are relevant to them. And it's very difficult to do, and I hope this succeeds.
Thank you very much. Mike Solomon?
Yeah, my only concern on this one is that it can be the figures can be manipulated. It's going to be very, very hard for us to check that. This is addressed more at Nick, I think, than anybody. That I don't see how you can possibly validate the signatures easily, or the people easily. That's my only concern about this one.
Over to the solicitor.
So I have no problem on the those on the electoral roll. I have Philippa and Sam who can do a cross-check. They've got plenty of spare time to do so. There is clearly a resource issue if we check every name. What Bristol do is they reserve the right to check all of the signatories, so that if there is suspicion of what you're alluding to, that we would, particularly on something particularly sensitive or whatever, we would put in checks. But the way they do it is to say we reserve the right.
Thank you. Councillor Tom Nicholson?
Thanks. I was going to ask the exact same question about confirming the electors, but I did have a couple of other points. One, I think it's a really excellent motion, and we should go ahead, particularly with the amendment. And I agree with the thresholds that have been set. But I'd like to ask if we could build in a review of those thresholds after 6 months. To review, given there's been discussion of it, could we come back and just build something into this motion that says we'll come back in 6 months and check the thresholds, just sort of see how this has worked out for us for 6 months.
Thank you. I think the leader wanted to come in there. Yes?
Well, I will.
No?
Thanks very much. No, I agree with that. I think Councillor Burden made the point as well. I think it's worth a try. If we haven't got the numbers right or it isn't effective, then we can review it and tweak it and change it. So I think that's very sensible. The other thing I was going to say, and actually in lots of ways is overlooked, I think the most important thing in this motion is actually about making sure that we treat petitions with respect. Because at the moment, members come along, members of the public and elected members present petitions at council, and more often than not, nothing happens. If you're lucky, or if you chase somebody, you might get a reply or an update, but there is no formal process and there's no transparency about what happens, where's it gone, what action has been taken, how do I follow up on it. And I think if we can get that sorted out so that there's a proper record and a paper trail to show how people can understand what's happened, what's next, how do I progress this issue further, that's a really important step forward. And that shows more than anything that we treat people seriously and with respect. And we need to do the same thing when members of the public come and participate in public participation, so that we don't all just sit here politely and nod and sometimes clap and then they go away and nothing happens. We actually record that and take action and report back to people, so that we start to build that trust and confidence that when people engage with us, we're taking it seriously and we're going to do something.
Thank you, Mike. Do you want to sum up, Caritas, or should we take a vote?
What he said.
Oh, hang on. I think... You ready?
Yeah, sorry.
Sorted? Okay.
Really bad headache. I was going to agree with the idea of the bar being a little bit lower, purely because, I mean, I represent 4 parishes and none of them are over 2,500 residents within themselves. And I'd also like to say that I think that a lot of us in this room were elected on less than 2,500 residents, so it's a very high bar. If you also look at it in comparison to the UK government, you need 100,000 signatures across the whole country to get something done in Parliament or debated. Now in this country, if you take that statistic down, to the North Somerset district residents and the proportion of it, it comes to just under 500 you would need. So I think probably somewhere around the mark of 1,000, 1,500 would be better, because that's about half of a ward.
I think Mike's got a suggestion on that. No?
Well, yes. I mean, I've got the suggestion that I made earlier, which is that we have a bit of a compromise with the 500 threshold for a policy and scrutiny panel, and then 2,500 for full council. And then I think, as we've discussed, if we agree that we will regularly review the scheme, and we can then consider whether it's appropriate to change the number in the light of experience, I think that's the way to go.
Caritas? Okay? Oh. I'm going to be quicker next time, Caritas. Okay. So, Catherine.
I was merely going to, it's a question really for the solicitor. If we are able to get the e-petition...
She's talking to you.
e-petition up and running, then we will be easily able to monitor the level of participation that petitions get and use that information to inform the review. So, I mean, if we see that petitions very rarely get above, let's say, 1,500, then will be the ideal data, won't it, to inform our review?
That would be. I don't think we're proposing to go immediately to an IT-based system, so it would be manual in the first place. Personally, at the moment, I have no experience of those sorts of online systems, but yeah, most of them would provide you with data and statistics.
And I think, Nicola, you wanted to come in, and then, Caritas, you can sum up.
As the one seconding this, I find it odd to say that actually I was looking at 2,500 and thinking that was far too high on the amendment. But with Mike's suggestion that 500 it goes to scrutiny, knowing the chairs of our scrutiny panels and how well they perform their roles, I'm fairly certain that at 500, if anything was important enough to get through to full council from scrutiny, it will.
Thank you. Right, Caritas, you're summing up.
Nothing really to sum up. Mike did it perfectly. I wouldn't want to steal his thunder.
Okay, all those in favour of accepting this motion from Councillor Charles? All those in favour? Thank you. All those against? No, it's carried then. Thank you very much. Last question. Okay, we come to question time. If I can remind you all of the procedure, you have one question. You first of all say which executive member you are asking the question of. You have one question. You have that question answered. If you want a second question, you go to the bottom of the list. Okay? So I think Councillor Steve Bridger has already posed a question. So would you like, you had one for Mark? Is that right?
I do. Does that mean I go first? I can jump the queue.
First.
Okay, excellent.
You actually sent your question in early.
I did.
You can go first.
Yeah.
You have the advantage of being
Okay,
first.
thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think my question is best directed at Mark, Councillor Caniford. I just need sort of 20, 30 seconds to sort of introduce the question, if you know what I mean. So I think we all know, I think it's now very, very common and probably the norm for a housing developer and the council to agree during the planning process via a planning condition that the green spaces on a development are not to be adopted by the council but managed privately, by a management company, to cut the grass or leave the grass and manage the communal areas, that kind of thing. I'm increasingly concerned by how management companies seem to be treating residents in my ward as a cash cow, basically, with households facing significant and unreasonable hikes in the estate service charge collected by a particular management company who I won't name, a business that's been backed by some aggressive private equity investors. There are even additional fees to this particular management company if you want to remortgage, hurdles if you want to sell your house, and threats of repossession if you delay payment, even if you're a freeholder. I met Liam Fox last Saturday to discuss this issue. I know he shares these concerns. I think he's acting on behalf of some residents in Portishead over this issue. So the question to Mark is, perhaps after first seeking some advice from the solicitor, Mark, would you meet with me because I need to understand, I think, what influence, what agency the council has as a local planning authority over the management of public open space on housing developments during the latter stages of the planning process. Obviously, there's a negotiation that happens. The developer appoints the management company, but during the planning process, there's a role for us to play, I think. Just 10 more seconds, Chair, just to give you one example from someone I was speaking to in my ward yesterday. They were asked to pay at the beginning of the year £348, which is not an insignificant amount for 2024. They sent off a cheque.
I'm sorry, Steve, what's your question?
The question was to Mark, but I'm just going to say, basically, this person was asked to pay £348. They queried it. They're now facing a bill of £1,096.
So what's your question?
My point is, I don't think we can stand by and watch residents get fleeced. So I would like to discuss the matter with Mark. There was a question there. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, Councillor Bridger, thank you for the question, and you did ask a question. I did get that. I mean, I think the fact is the council's preference is to adopt infrastructure. You're under a DM 70. 6 dwellings or more is the road. Anything more than 50, we try and adopt everything, all infrastructure. And as you may well know, that commercial space is a case-by-case basis. You're not wrong. This is wrong. This is very similar to the issues they've dealt with around leaseholds, and they do need to be addressed. So what I propose is that we will set up a meeting, you and myself, initially with officers, because we also have the benefit of the local plan at the moment, so we can look at how we can possibly inject something into that to try and be more encouraging towards developers giving us the land. There are questions. It could be that they see this cash cow and something needs to be done nationally. It could be that we're charging them too much through 106s. So let's have a look at it. Let's see what we can work out. Let's see if we can find a suitable solution to this. And if we cannot, then let's possibly make representations up to the Department of Levelling Up and see if we can get this changed. So I'm fully in support of you and your residents. It is unreasonable, and we need to see if we can do something about it.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Steve. It is a big issue. I think Patrick Keaton wanted to ask.
Thank you. This is a question for Councillor Young, as it seems to be my habit. While we can be rightly proud of the success of North Somerset in gaining record funding for our bus service improvement plan, residents are concerned that existing proposed plans around bus infrastructure, bus lanes, are over-engineered for the amount of buses that we have circulating on our roads now and potentially in the future, and the disruption caused by the bus lane construction has had outweighs the benefits. And I think, is there really a need for a huge new gyratory at Churchill? So could the member please therefore commit to reporting back to this council before our meeting in May on what steps she intends to take to ensure that bus service improvement funds are spent only on practical, effective and value for money schemes that are to the benefit of all North Somerset residents, commit to scrapping schemes that do not meet this test, and reassure us that all members will be fully involved with the refresh of the BSIP, which is upcoming, and as part of that process to push government to give us at North Somerset more flexibility in how we can use that funding so that future schemes have the support of all local communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Young.
Thank you, Councillor Keating. And I know a number of my colleagues are aware I've been working very hard behind the scenes with the team to look at the issues that have been raised in respect of the bus service improvement plan, hearing the concerns of communities and looking at the revised government guidance. So firstly, I think in relation to your first point, do I commit to come back to the council? Yes, I do. But I would also like to take this opportunity to make a few points this evening on where we've got to already in respect of some of those questions. I would like to remind members, who, particularly those who joined the council like me last May and may not have been here at the start of the bus service improvement plan, that there was quite an extensive process of bidding to government for that close to record pot of money, £48 million that North Somerset received. And government doesn't hand out that money with no reason. I've had to come to up to speed very quickly with the rationale behind the schemes and the data that was related to it. Other members who were here at an earlier time will have had more opportunity to scrutinise that at the time. But clearly, there are very good reasons why we wanted to go ahead with that, we as a council at the time, and not least that in 2022 there were massive cuts to bus services that left many of our communities without any access to public transport at all. And I regularly receive concerns from members of communities every time we have a change in service around April and September as a result of our improvement plan. I hear from communities who say we don't have a bus and we really want one. We will only get those buses going forward if we have the opportunity to run them efficiently and well, and therefore it's very important that we continue to recognise as a council our role in supporting communities in that way. That said, I have heard concerns from our communities about the nature of the schemes that have been put forward and that are ongoing. Some of my colleagues, again, will know that at the point when I joined the council, the first tranche of schemes, the first 7, were already under contract, and we're just seeing, I think it's the last of those schemes in delivery now, which is the Wood Hill scheme. All of the proposed locations for schemes were carefully identified jointly by North Somerset Council and the bus operators so that we could understand the locations, the causes of delays, but they were agreed in the knowledge that further testing, engagement and consultation would be needed to establish the best approach for each location. Delivering this scale of government-funded programme is undoubtedly extremely challenging, and any single large infrastructure scheme would bring with it some disruption during its construction. And I recognise that's phenomenally frustrating for residents who are using our roads on any basis, but on a regular basis. So in light of all of that, I'd like to say that what we're now planning to do, recognising the councillor and public concern about the scale and impact of the programme, is to look carefully. Since November, we've been undertaking significant early engagement with communities and representatives on the next tranche of schemes within the programme. And that includes schemes such as Backwell, Churchill, and Rownham Hill, for example. And we're at a stage where some engagement windows have closed, and we've got that feedback. Others are still ongoing or even about to open. We've also been completing testing and surveys. I've heard requests for data. What's the data that shows that these schemes will be effective? What's the data that shows that the ones have been delivered so far have actually delivered what they were intended to deliver? How can we be sure that things will be effective if we move forward with them? And so over the next few months, the only bus priority scheme being delivered will be at Wood Hill, which is part of the Congressbury congestion scheme. We won't be starting any other new BSIP priority works before November at the earliest. Taking a pause to review the infrastructure programme, the remainder of the infrastructure programme as a whole, reflecting on feedback and considering how we can change our approach to BSIP capital delivery to address the concerns that have been raised with us. I want to take that time so that we can look at all of the consultation responses that have come back, gather further data where that's important, look at the proposals and alternative options if they're simpler or the original proposals weren't required. And we will also be reviewing that in the context of the new Department for Transport guidance on bus priority that was issued just last month. It would have been helpful to have that earlier, but since it's here now, it's important to take time to have a look at it and review and consider what we do on the remaining schemes. So in terms of the commitment that you requested, Councillor Keating, would we be scrapping schemes? It's quite emotive language. We'll be reviewing. Some of you will know that back in the autumn, when we established the contract for this next set of design of schemes, I, with my executive colleagues, introduced a point in the process so that there would be an executive decision before any scheme went forward, any further scheme went forward into build and delivery. And so in this next tranche of schemes, you will have a clear decision point for each of those schemes, which will go on the forward plan. In fact, there is something on the forward plan already. I think some of those decision points will need to move in the context of the review. And that will be taken seriously. And there are a number of options that we have in that position. One is that schemes will continue as per the proposals. The second is that a scheme may change. There might be revised proposals, or a scheme may not go forward at all. So I commit that will be the case. We will make that decision scheme by scheme, but we will certainly look to involve members in the BSIP refresh in order to be able to get to the best plan that we can for the future. I'd like to commit also that in order to improve communication on BSIP, we'll be setting up a number of member engagements on the I'd like to commit that we will also be doing a series of member engagements to involve members in the BSIP work going forward, and we will also be producing a regular newsletter so that people are clear about where things are. I very much welcome member involvement in the BSIP refresh. I made that point the minute I knew it was possible. We've had an open initial meeting with parish and town councils, and I continue to welcome that involvement. So yes, you have my assurance for that point.
Thank you for that very comprehensive response to Councillor Keating's question, and I wonder if other people who've asked to speak will have had their answer already. The next person on my list is Councillor Oliver Ellis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This again to Councillor Youngs. Back in summer last year, I had a meeting with Councillor Youngs to discuss the West End lanes in Nailsea. We've got single track lanes, lots of building sites going on around there. A member of the public had been hit by a car and a number of other near misses. Councillor Youngs committed to a follow-up meeting with officers to see what we could do about it. Anyway, over 7 months on, numerous emails to Councillor Youngs, I haven't had a single reply, and nor has another member of my ward who was asked to email Councillor Young by the leader of the council. I know she's busy, but I know she's also been having other meetings in that time frame. Will she commit to a meeting and have a genuine view to make these lanes safer?
Councillor Young.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. We obviously have met and talked initially around these proposals and with an officer as well. I will commit to have another meeting, but I have discussed with the team, and I believe this has been fed back already to you, that we would be looking at the West End lanes in the context of the transport assessment of the local plan. I have been continuing work around that, and I'm very happy to meet and look at what can be done in the run-up to any changes within that.
Thank you, but yeah, that has not been communicated to me.
Thank you for the communication, Hannah. Councillor Kieran Connolly, where are you?
Yeah, I'm here. So my question's to the leader of the council. The recent heavy rain has led to residents at Hudson Moor Lane becoming stranded due to kind of surface level flooding. At times it's quite difficult unless you've got a car to pass that. The council have been good, they've come out quickly, they've identified the issue, but it requires capital investment, and obviously we're under financial pressure. So my question is, can you provide a reassurance that the council will look into prioritising these much needed capital investment, ideally this year, because it's a bit of a difficult one, because it's only one way out of Hutton Moor Lane?
Thanks, Kieran, and thank you as well for giving me notice of this question, which has enabled me to check the facts with the team. So it's not quite as clear-cut as you set out in your question, because the Highways and Flood Risk team are still investigating the exact causes of the flooding in this location. Unfortunately, there are no watercourses or surface water sewers in the vicinity, and the historic drainage records aren't very good, so it's not completely clear exactly how drainage is operating in that location. It may well be that they rely on soakaways. Because we've had the wettest 18 months on record, the ground is obviously saturated, and so soakaways aren't functioning in the way that they were intended to do. And of course, the drainage arrangements for the recent development that you referred to also need to be investigated. We are beginning some feasibility work to look at the viability of some capital works there, and whether there is a watercourse that could be accessed in order to support drainage in that area. But that's not straightforward because the relevant land is owned by a third party. So what I have been assured by the team is that they will look to see if an interim solution can be delivered this year in conjunction with the neighbouring landowners. So I hope that at least you can reassure your residents that we will try and do what we can as quickly as we can, pending that longer term intervention. More generally, all colleagues will know, and we're going to talk about it later, that there are real issues in terms of flooding mitigation and management across the network. The kinds of interventions that historically were good enough are not good enough anymore, because as we've seen in recent months and recent years, we're getting more and more rain over a sustained period, and the systems, many of which date back to Victorian times, are just not up to the job.
Thank you, Mark. Next speaker is Councillor Stuart McQuillan. Where are you?
I'm here. Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is for Councillor Young, and it does relate to buses, but not BSIP directly. So I'm not repeating something earlier, although I will take the opportunity to thank Councillor Young for her statement on BSIP, because it does impact my ward as well. So this is around bus frequency. So I'm regularly approached by parents who live in Long Ashton and try and get their secondary school children to Nailsea and Backwell schools via the X7 and X9 buses. And they have complained to me, and frankly I've experienced it myself using the X7 and X9 occasionally, around cancelled buses and buses that are too full. And I know you can say having too full buses is a nice problem to have, but if you have a bad experience of a crowded bus, you won't get the bus again. So my question is, alongside everything that's being done with BSIP, what is the council doing to hold First Bus to account for what they should be doing in terms of investing in routes and drivers and reliability? And within that, is there anything more we can specifically do around the X7 and X9 routes? Thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to take that opportunity to clarify that the bus service improvement plan is not just about infrastructure. So your question is about BSIP, it's just about a different part of the BSIP. And I know that probably sounds pedantic, but it is really important to say we're not just doing things to our roads. We are doing a huge amount of work to try to increase the reliability of buses, which is absolutely critical. It's the number one thing nationally and locally. People say to us, we will not use the bus unless it's reliable, unless we can get on it and we know that it's going to get us to where we need to go when we need to go. In terms of, and a lot of money is going from the grant, from the revenue side of the BSIP grant, in order to subsidise services currently, which is why we're working so hard on the infrastructure to try to make sure that we can be more efficient and not have that subsidy going forward. Two things I want to pick up quickly. On the X7 and X9 specifically, we know that there have been issues across a number of services around single deckers, around full buses. As you say, it's a nice problem to have, but it does cause problems for us. And we regularly pick up, there are officers within the transport team who are in contact with First Bus daily. They have a weekly meeting with them. There is a monthly performance meeting with them. And today I met with the head of operations for First Bus for the West of England, who is new in post, and we talked in some detail about issues around performance and reliability and what was causing those and how we could work together in order to be able to get those services working more effectively. In terms of how can we engage communities in the services that they need, I'm really keen to do that. I was speaking at Nailsea Town Council last week and saying we've done quite a lot of work in Portishead with communities, fantastic engagement from communities who've been really clear about what they were looking for. And as a result of that, over a period of time, we've managed to put the X10 back in place. We've got a new operator for the X10. We've got the route to Southmead Hospital that they wanted, but we need to do that within other communities too. And Nailsea and Clevedon were the next on the list, but certainly which will be affected by the X9 and X7. and I will make that invitation more widely to members after this meeting, so that we can be clear about how people can feed into the next stage of service changes. Just really briefly, I'm sorry I'm taking so long, but really on the performance side also, I have said to officers that there has been a lot of work on the infrastructure side, and I want this next period to be much more focused on the services, the network and the performance, because there is no point in having efficient buses if no one is using them. And to that end, I've asked, and First Bus can confirm today, that I will be having a quarterly meeting with them in order to be able to work through those issues. And we have a number of other tools that we can use through the enhanced partnership if those need to be implemented. But First Bus are very willing for us to be doing that, and I'm pleased to be taking that forward.
May I ask a brief
Thank you.
supplementary?
No,
Chairman?
if you want another question, you go back to the bottom. Okay. Councillor Luke Smith.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question to Councillor Solomon. The awarding of the Salthouse Fields new concessions has been delayed. This means that the badly missed mini train is expected to remain out of use for yet another season, despite the conflicting element being incredibly limited to a clash between a proposed redevelopment of the mini golf, which is badly needed to be fair, and obviously the long-standing proposals from Cleveland Skate Project. Residents will find it a bitter pill to swallow that the whole area and planned investments have been affected, and there's no guarantee that for the year's stopgap that their practical solution will be found. So to summarise, is this really the best way forwards?
Unfortunately, it's the only way forward because we don't control the concessions, and the mini train needs repairing and we can't repair it. So whoever's running that concession wants to run that concession. If we'd waited for all the concessions to get themselves together, so the train was running anything else, we wouldn't have been able to renew the cafe. All we've done is we've renewed the cafe, we've postponed it for a year. The crazy golf, that hasn't necessarily been put in place, in as much as there isn't anybody that has really put their hand up to say, yeah, we want to run that. So it's kind of out of our hands, Luke. That's the problem on this. We would love to see someone coming forward with the train to run it. We'd love to see someone coming forward and running that crazy golf. We can't run it ourselves. There will be other things where we're trying to get people to come forward to put on the fields during the summer months, but it's we're in a tough space there, I'm afraid.
I think if Luke, the answer is if you can find someone to help it out, that would be very much appreciated. Councillor Ashley Cartman.
Thank you, Chair. My question's for Councillor Young. Sorry again. I think it's about bus lanes and BSIP. So I think the sense I have is that we've been playing an epic game of bus lane supermarket sweep as a council. I don't think we expected to get on the show, but when we did, we got a lot of money in our pocket and the clock was ticking. Officers disappeared around North Somerset with their trolley, but as they turn up into wards, I think we find they put the wrong bus lanes in the trolley. So I think my question is can you clarify there'll be no commitment to new bus lanes for 6 months, which I think you did, but just to make that clear, and that we will write to government and ask for additional flexibility in terms of the timing that we've got to spend the scheme and what we can spend it on, because I absolutely believe if you and the team had more time and more flexibility, we would absolutely get what we need and deserve in North Somerset.
Thank you for the opportunity, Ash, for me to add another point from my very long answer to the previous question. We have already been engaging with the Department for Transport about extending the programme. It's very much my view, and I'd been discussing it with officers for a little while, that actually one of our challenges is we are on a very extensive programme, which is very challenging to deliver. And if we are going to be able to monitor and evaluate the schemes that have been delivered so far and check and test and make sure that we're on the right track, then we need more time in between schemes in order to be able to do that and to make sure that we're getting it right. And not just that, but also then build confidence in communities that we're getting it right because we've got the data. So we're having that conversation with the Department for Transport. We have had advice from them about submitting a project adjustment request. So rather than write to them in that sense, we will be going through the formal process that they have recommended. And in terms of the decision points for schemes, we will be having a pause in delivery. There is one of the Western schemes which I think we may want to make a decision on within that 6-month period, which is the Queensway roundabout, and that is because we have an awful lot of works coming up in Western that we need to determine our position on before we work out the network management. Members will know that, for example, there are going to be works to the Winterstoke Bridge. We will be looking at works on Banwell Bypass. Those will all have potential network management arrangements. We're expecting at some point there'll also be works at Junction 21, which I'm trying to get confirmation at the moment. So we do need to be really careful about not cutting off our nose to spite our face on the Queensway element, and finding that we've got lots of works happening at the same time in Western, which would be really detrimental to our communities' opportunities to travel. So I won't make a full commitment on that, but I will make a full commitment that the review will be a proper and honest one, and that we will set dates within the forward plan. I think currently in the forward plan there are a number that have been put in that say not before the 1st of May, and I think it's absolutely no way before the 1st of May. I don't have proposals sitting in front of me. We will very quickly amend that to put some sensible timings in, and I don't think many of those will be, if any of them, will be in the apart from Queensway, will be in the next 6 months.
Thank you. I think you need a rest. Councillor Tom Nicholson.
Oh, it's not for you, Hannah, don't worry. Actually, I have a question for Councillor Bell. Would you mind giving us an update on the Banwell bypass? It's obviously a matter of great significance, so if you don't mind giving us an update, I would be grateful. I would also like to apologise for not giving you a heads up until about 15 minutes ago that I was going to ask the question. I do appreciate your willingness to take this with very short notice. Thank you.
No, very happy to have the question, and the heads up means that I'll be slightly more informed than I would have been otherwise, so that's really helpful. Obviously, members will know that, unfortunately, our appointed contractor, Alan Griffiths, pulled out of the scheme to build the Banwell bypass a few weeks ago, which was very disappointing, and we're continuing to work through the implications of that, including exploring legal avenues and other factors. But the good news is that we've already, thanks to the effectiveness of the team that we've got working here in North Somerset and the great project and design and business plan that we had for the bypass in place, we've already been able to identify replacement contractors to start some of the environmental works that are necessary in advance of the construction of the bypass. So residents will see that happening in the next few days and weeks in and around Banwell, which is really positive. And we're continuing to have conversations with Homes England as the funder and other potential contractors to make sure that we can get the main works delivered as intended. At the moment, we haven't got fine details in terms of exactly when we'll be able to start and who the new contractor will be, but we remain confident that we'll be able to get spades in the ground very quickly. So although we've taken a hit in terms of being let down by the contractor, I'm pleased that the robustness of the plan that we've put together and the funding package that we've got mean that we should be in a position to continue to deliver the scheme before too long. And it's actually useful to just again pay tribute to all the teams in North Somerset over many years who've been working on this project. I am fed up of the number of residents in Banwell who've said to me, it will never happen. We've been talking about this for 100 years. I guarantee you we are going to build this bypass. It's just a question of timing now.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Tom Dawes, are you ready?
I am, thank you. My one's for Hannah. Sorry, it's not road this time. So Rington had a bus called 127. It used to go from Rington to the school in the morning to get school kids. It was brilliant. It gave children, sixth form students, the independency to pay for a bus, go to and from. With this service being cut, when I wasn't informed about it until it being published on North Somerset website in the communications, which I was quite upset about. there's also issues around the costing of it, in that it now costs parents about double the amount for them to then be able to get their kids on the Baker's Dolphin buses to get them into school now. I just wondering as to why I wasn't consulted about it, and who made the decision, and if maybe we can possibly repair this by extending the hours in which the 125 runs, so it runs earlier in the morning. At the moment it starts at 9 in the morning, which for any residents of Rington wanting to use it to get to work in Weston, it's not available. Thank you.
Hannah?
So, in terms of not being informed, I think there have been some glitches around the service changes information and the involvement of councillors, and we've tried in the 2 occasions since I've been in this role to involve people, but there is quite a complex set of different consultation arrangements. I have recently been talking about that with the team so that we can try and improve it for next time. In essence, through our enhanced partnership, which is the legal agreement that we have with the bus operators, the Department for Transport and other stakeholders like WECA, which we all sign up to in order to get all of that money, some of which is used to subsidise the bus services that we are able to run. What that means is we can only make changes in April and September each year. The bus registration requirements are that there is a 10-week period of consultation before the registration, which means that we've been trying to work the timeline about how can we engage our communities on what they would like of their service, do the work with the operators to understand can we put those in place either on a commercial basis or by some form of subsidy, work with our colleagues in WECA on negotiating that. We don't set the direct routes, so we try and negotiate that with the operators, because even if we pay for them, they may choose not to operate them, and we've had that situation before. Then go to registration, then have the statutory consultation about registration, and then eventually we end up with the route at the end of the day. And it's not always the route that I anticipated it was going to be at the end of the day. So, I've had occasions since I've been in this role myself where things have been more of a surprise than I would have wanted them to be. So along that time scale, what's really important now is I used to have people coming to me and saying, oh, there are bus service changes in September. It's now mid-August. Can I have this? And what we absolutely need to get through is the very final deadline that we have, really, for all of that process to happen for September is mid-June. And that's why it's really important in this period up to mid-June that we're talking to our communities about what is it that they think that they would like and need. And we can't promise that we'll put all of that in place, because gradually we're trying to build the network back up. And often that means we might be able to introduce a service in, say, September, see how it's going in terms of patronage over the course of 6 months or a year. If it's going well, we don't have to subsidise it so much. We can put that money somewhere else and try to build the service. So I think there is, as I said, I want to focus this period on service, network and performance. I want to have that conversation more actively. I'd really strongly encourage people to be talking to me, and there's some fantastic people in the team. I'd like to flag up Neil Summers is amazing, actually. He's done a huge job about building our network with First. So please, I will get in touch, and we'll think about how we can gauge that. Just really quickly on the additional, on the specifics around your ward, where we manage, we're juggling all the time. So there are winners in some service changes, and there are often losers as well, because we're trying to do the maximum that we can for the greatest number that we can in our communities. We did make arrangements. We did make sure that those young people would not be stranded and would have another option. We can't always guarantee that we can provide people with the cheapest option. We don't have a statutory duty to run transport. You know, we're doing our best to negotiate and to use the fare packages that we can to get the best deal for the most of our communities. It's not great when it's you at the end of the day that says, actually, now I have to pay more, or I haven't quite got the service that I need. But as we have to look at this as a whole and trying to make the best decisions for our communities. And I'm a firm believer that the best way we do that is by involving more people. So, welcome Caritas' motion on that too. But please, let's talk more over this period and over the period of the BSIP refresh to get more of what we want. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Mike Solomon, are you there? I can't see you.
I am here, and unfortunately, it's a bit of déjà vu for me, because I had a similar portfolio in the last administration where some nights it would be, it was all at me, and I'm afraid, Hannah, it's your turn again tonight, so my apologies.
Your question's for Hannah again,
My
is it?
question for Hannah is the management of our detour signs. I'm seeing more and more detailed signs having to go up with the roadworks we're doing, and it seems to me that they're just put up randomly, where they'll say road ahead closed, when in fact a road on the right is closed further up, or a road on the left is closed further up. We've had detours through Hutton where the signs haven't been clear, so ambulances have got to the closed road and had to turn back on 2 occasions.
I'm sorry, Mike, what's your question?
My question is, can we look at the management, please? Can Hannah ask officers to look at the management of these road signs that aren't necessarily all ours? They might be people like the water board, etc. But could I ask Hannah to look at the management of these signs, or her officers to do that?
Just to say, I believe we've got a scrutiny session coming up on network management, because we've been discussing a number. It clearly causes huge issues for our communities, and we've got an increasing number of works on the network, and most of them, I would say, are not ours. We've got a huge number of utilities works. Mike talked about our ageing infrastructure, our drainage, and all sorts. There is a massive amount going on, as we all know. It's a huge job to be able to get on top of not only the scheduling of those works, but the review, as you say, of the actual signs. I hear your frustration. We do have a very small network management team with a very large workload, so coming out on site and doing that when it's not even our actual roadworks is a big ask. But I think let's have that conversation at scrutiny and see what we can come up with as a possible way forward.
Thank you, Hannah.
Yeah, guess what? It's for Hannah. Very quick one, this one. The highways improvement request forms. I submitted 3 last year. I've heard nothing other than a bit of communication. Mike Bell did come to the school safety zone in St George's. I've had issues of violence now where parking issues have got out of hand, where there was an assault of 2 people were assaulted in Dunedin Way. And it's just something that is bubbling away within my 2 parishes of Wixon Lawrence and St George's, which seems like I'm wading through treacle to get anything done whatsoever. And now it's increasingly using other resources such as the police, such as the highways, such as the council. And I really need a bit of feedback on those requests, please.
If you've had no feedback at all, I'll pick that up, because I think, as you know, I've said to a number of people, we've got over 1,000 requests for different highways improvements across those forms. There has been a process of going through and assessing them against policy. I mean, obviously, school safety is a really important part of policy. I last picked that up around a month ago to see where we've got to, because we need to start on this year's programme. And I picked it up last week with the team around when will we see what is currently planned for this year's programme, and when can we do the piece of work around involving scrutiny in looking at what else can be put forward beyond what has been assessed as the most important things to go forward in the programme. I would say we're experiencing real challenges. We already had challenges in staffing. We've lost further highways engineers. We've really struggled to recruit. It's a problem across councils. I know it doesn't help our communities, and I discuss that regularly, and we're looking at how we can possibly try to increase what we're doing, but it's really challenging. What I will say is, yes, I will get someone to get back to you about the specific ones that you've put in. Yeah.
Thank you, Hannah. Councillor Peter Bryant.
Thank you, Chairman. A question for the Leader of the Council, please. Mike, I'm extremely embarrassed with this, because I have to thank you profusely for arranging for the road outside my house to be completely resurfaced. And my question, and I'll keep it down and short, is why has this decision been made? Because this particular road, Beach Road, is currently in the top 5% of the best roads within the district. And so I'd like to know the reason, and what money are we spending on it? Thank you.
Mike?
I'm happy to answer this question, even though really it should be directed to Councillor Young, but she's had more than She's had more than her fair share tonight. And of course, you are a resident of my ward, Peter, so it's always pleasing to have your endorsement. What I can tell you is I have looked into this issue because a number of residents have contacted me and said, why is Beach Road being done? It's not that bad. And Beach Road is being done because it is the surface level is showing signs of beginning to deteriorate. So what we do as part of our asset management strategy for highways is we try to intervene early where possible to prevent a more serious deterioration in a road surface. And the reason we do that is that it's much cheaper, it's less disruptive if we do an early surface treatment rather than wait for the road to deteriorate and then need to do much more expensive work. So it's a sensible value for money decision. The other factor, of course, that also needs to be taken into account in relation to Beach Road, it's a very important A road into and out of Weston-super-Mare, with access to the town centre, to the seafront, and as well as a number of businesses that share your community. So again, it fits into a slightly different area in terms of our priorities. What I can say is I'm satisfied that the engineering team have done the right thing. They've made the right decision in terms of prioritising, and I'm very pleased that you'll be able to look out of your window and see a beautiful road surface. And the sooner that we can try and achieve that for the other roads that need attention in North Somerset, the better. And I'm sure that you will be lobbying MPs and your government to make sure that they give us the money so that we can do so.
Thank you, Mike. Stuart McQuillan, did you want to come back? I bet you thought I'd forgotten you. I hadn't.
No, I haven't forgotten my question. And thank you for indulging me. Very briefly, and thank you very much, Councillor Young, for your answer. I was going to say, could the readouts of the meetings you have with the bus operators be shared publicly to an extent so that the residents are aware these meetings are happening and aware the council and yourself are holding First Bus to account? I think it would really help, because I think sometimes there's a perception the council isn't doing something when actually it is.
Hannah again?
Yes, I'm happy to provide an update at the end of each meeting. Yeah.
Thank you. Bridget, Councillor Bridget Petty.
Hi, Hannah. This carries on partly from what Stuart said, and I appreciate all your hard work and how challenging the work of this must be. In the past week, Taylor Wimpey have issued new documents saying that the BSIP works will not be proceeding in Backwell. And so the residents of Backwell have become very concerned that the communications that they're getting is not from the council, who should be deciding and making decisions on what's going to happen next, but instead hearing it through third parties and specifically developers. And it's just a really bad look, isn't it? So, I mean, yes, so I think that I'd like to ask if we could make a commitment to making a public statement linked to what you said at the opening of the first question, because I completely, because I think it would be appreciated and valued. But I'm going to say leaning in to this difficult time that we're in, because I know that so much work is going on behind the scenes, but our commitment to be open, I do think that we can trust in our residents more, because the trouble is, we've heard it before, when we create a vacuum, we kind of end up with all of these anxious councillors who are getting it from their residents. And I'm just going to, so I'll just say, I'll say two more things. One is, I mean, it did come to mind that if this many people have this many questions, could there be a standing item on BSIP, on key decisions that have taken place, so that then actually there's an agenda item in? So could you consider that and take that away for the council meetings, given BSIP is so significant for the next couple of years and there will be this ongoing thing? Then my final thing is on the, we're going to move on to the forward plan, and in there, and you referred to it, there is a line that says on the 1st of May, approval of the concept design for the A370 Backwell Crossroads signals. Can you confirm that that line and that decision, which says decision maker Councillor Young only, is going to be removed, and or that this piece of work has been disregarded? Thank you.
Thank you on those things. I completely appreciate the comments, and you and I have talked about the Backwell issue over several months. I'm really keen to get a communication out so that it's very clear. I'd hoped actually to do it before this meeting rather than spend so much time within this meeting going through it, but there is one imminently which will be circulated to ward members initially. I'm very keen that also goes to parish and town councils as soon as possible, so everybody's clear.
I'd recommend it just goes public because people are waiting, and I just think that we can trust them.
May I? It's not that I just don't trust communities, but I think there's also something specific for Backwell residents, and I did commit to the the parish council that we would write formally to the parish council to be clearer for Backwell, which, you know, there's a level of detail about that, which, as you say, will be of keen importance to those communities. I wasn't aware of the Taylor Wimpey communication. I certainly haven't been in communication with Taylor Wimpey, so thank you for letting me know about that, and I will try to rectify the communication issues. It will start from tomorrow, so certainly there'll be an update for ward members initially, and then we'll look at the wider comms as soon as possible. I'm trying to remember your other points.
It's just that the forward plan specifically says there's a decision being made on the 1st of May, which isn't a matter of
There has
weeks.
been a lot of work behind the scenes, and as I've referenced, we've been talking to the Department for Transport too. Some of these documents have different timelines, and it's been a fast-moving piece of work to think about how can we start to reshape what we're doing and get ourselves into a better place as part of the BSIP refresh. So no, the Backwell decision will not be made on the 1st of May. I think, to be pedantic, I think the forward plan says not before the 1st of May. But so absolutely, there are no decisions coming forward on the 1st of May. We are not anywhere close at this point to having explored the other options for Backwell. Those positions will be changed on the forward plan as soon as we've done a little bit more work to give a better indication of the likely timescale. You've heard today we've got quite a period of review, so you can imagine that they're likely to be pushed back some way. And I would suggest for Backwell it's likely to be probably the tail end of the calendar year.
Thank you, Hannah. Do you want to go and lie down now? That's the end of question time. Thank you, everybody. Moving on, no matters referred from previous meetings. Leaders' announcements? None. Chief Exec's announcements? None. Forward plan, leader to present?
Just move for noting, Chair.
Forward plan is noted, and Hannah's mentioned several things. Item 16, policy and the scrutiny panel reports. You've had the reports, you've been able to read them. I shall invite the scrutiny chairs in order if they want to add anything, but they possibly don't. So first of all, Dan Thomas.
Nothing to add, Chair.
Thank you. Second, Helen Thornton.
Nothing to add.
Okie dokie. Joe Trisman, Joe.
Nothing to add either, thank you.
John Cropford-Hawley.
Brevity, so nothing to add.
Oh, that's a good one coming from you, John.
No comment, Chairman.
Steve Bridger?
Oh. Yeah, I did want to say something. Sorry, it is important. It's only 8:07. Brief. Well, don't rush me, Chair. But I will be brief. I've got a question for Hannah. No, I'm only joking. I did, and I'm honestly not going to speak to the content of my bit of the report because, like all the summaries, I think it speaks for itself and our respective thank yous and so on and so forth. I just wanted to make a couple of general comments about scrutiny because obviously all the chairs were all trying to continually improve the way we do policy and scrutiny and add value and all that kind of thing and carve out more time for policy development in particular. Philippa Penny here on my right and team are already working on a couple of, well, more than a couple actually, a number of different strands to raise the profile of scrutiny, but there are a couple of improvements I think that are in train. So the first one of those just wanted to mention is that the published minutes of policy and scrutiny panels I think now record actions from those panel meetings and it's more focused on around outcomes, so we'll be able to sort of track those actions and the work being done on them more effectively, I think, going forward. And then something which I asked for, which I think will be rolled out, is that the contribution of non-executive members through the scrutiny process, and particularly the informal scrutiny process, is captured and reflected then in the reports that go to the executive, because obviously all the panels have, dozens and dozens of informal scrutiny briefings, but report will go to the executive, and under the consultation section, there's sometimes hardly or no mention at all that that's happened. And I think it's important that you know, to add validity to the whole process that is reflected in the reports. Now, obviously, the ultimate decision is for the executive, and some of the ideas and comments from non-executive members might be, you know, crap. But that I think needs to be reflected, I think, in the reports going forward to the executive in those reports. I think that will begin to happen as well. So that's all I wanted to say. That was quite quick, wasn't it?
Thank you. So you are actually summarising scrutiny processes for the benefit of all 5 scrutiny chairs. Yeah. Thank you then. And it was brief, Steve. Well done. Moving on. Reports and matters from exec, none. Reports and matters from the policy, none. Reports and matters referred from other committees, none. Reports on joint arrangements and external organisations and questions. I think you've had one report issued yesterday, but if... Sorry, Dan.
I have an oral report, if that's okay, on the Avon Fire Authority.
So who's the Avon Fire Authority? That's you. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Avon Fire Authority met on March 20th. The main issue debated was the updated 2024-25 revenue budget and medium-term financial plan. This was not agreed at the previous AFA meeting in February 2024. For background, the fire service needs to make savings of 4 million over the next 4 years. 5 options were presented to meet this budget shortfall. The officer's recommended option involved 625,000 of annual efficiency savings and a 500,000 contribution from the revenue budget to the capital programme. Members rejected the recommended proposal as the efficiency savings would have resulted in reduction of fire crews from 5 to 4, and the overall reduction of full-time frontline firefighters by 40. After a long and difficult debate, an alternative option was adopted by members, which would mean the firefighter number reductions would be delayed with no impact on capital investment plans for the service. Also, last week, the chair of the Avon Fire Authority, the vice chair, and myself undertook the annual appraisal of the chief fire officer, Simon Shilton.
So if you've got something written down, Dan, can you send it to Philippa, please?
I can, thank you.
Is that right, Philippa? Good plan. Thank you. Councillor Crewe, Peter, your Avon and Somerset Police and Crime panel.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This meeting was convened after PERDA because they changed the date. So I've not done a written report because we, on the PCC's report, we just took it as read with no questions. But I thought it was interesting, 2 other reports which came through which had slide presentations was on the work now being done with the police, with the business community regarding antisocial behaviour and shoplifting, and the second one on police performance. Now, because it was a slide report, I've had a discussion with Steve regarding the community safety group and suggested it might make sense for those slides to be presented to that group. If that's successful, Madam Chairman, I think it's more sensible in future for that community safety group to meet the week after the PCC panel so we can actually report direct to a group in question on that and then bring a report to council if necessary. Many people I know, I get 1 or 2 questions every now and then, not much is said at all, but I think maybe looking at it as scrutiny from that report, and I think we've just had a date for the first one, which Steve and I notified on today. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That sounds a good process. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. Can I just ask on that? Can I also be notified of the date of that meeting, please, if that's okay?
Yeah. Thank you. No.
Thank you, Chair. Members will have received our report this morning, and I hope very much that you have had time to read it. So the November motion asked me to report back to members on the important work of the Environment Agency, and in particular in relation to the maintenance of assets. More specifically, for me to ask the Environment Agency to let us know which assets in North Somerset they would no longer be able to maintain. The report before you explains the process through which funding is requested and awarded by the government. And it's clear from the report that maintenance funding is insufficient by a very, very large margin. In this financial year, 64% of assets requiring maintenance will not be funded. And clearly this is of huge concern, not just to North Somerset, but also to other councils in the Wessex area. The Environment Agency has not yet provided me with a list of assets which will not be maintained, so the detailed list that members have requested is not yet available. This list is usually issued in the first quarter, so we expect to receive it in the next few months. I should like to say at this point that David Jenkins, the chair of the Regional Flood and Coastal Committee, has worked extremely hard for years to raise awareness at government level of the lack of funding for maintenance of assets. And this report is a brief overview of the work that he has done in his role as chair of that committee. So Councillor Burden and I met last month to discuss our shared concerns, and he asked me at that point if I could give him reassurance that this council had at all times supported the chair of the Regional Flood and Coastal Committee in his attempts to raise this awareness. I'm pleased to be able to confirm that this has indeed been the case in the past and that this will continue to be so as we go forward. I'm very grateful to Councillor Burden for raising awareness of flood risk in North Somerset, as well as our shared concerns over lack of funding for asset maintenance, which is of genuine concern. I am reliably told that last week's flooding in Weston and Clevedon was actually worse than had been expected or predicted, which further underlines the need for all of us to work closely with the Environment Agency to protect our communities. I'd really genuinely like to thank Councillor Burden for taking the time to meet with me and for his willingness to share his knowledge as well as his concerns. And I hope that he would agree with me that we had a very productive meeting. Councillor Burden has invited me to attend the next available Internal Drainage Board meeting. Oh, I know. And well, it gets better. And he's asked me to join him on a walkabout to some of the areas for which the Internal Drainage Board has responsibility. And I have been warned that I need to bring my wellies, which I will do. I'm very much looking forward to both occasions and look forward to us working together for the good of the district. Thank you.
And on that cheerful note, do you want to say anything, Peter?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, can I thank the executive member for the report and this misunderstanding, basically, as my assumption as the way things come forward. And if you look at the paperwork, I wanted to try and get this council's to give the support to David Jenkins at the January meeting, but as the report didn't come forward, that couldn't happen. But, Chairman, it is a serious issue in this district, and I've got the worry with the Environment Agency, and I have been involved on and off with them for nearly 30 years, them and their predecessors. They have a level of staff which are very good at covering up issues and working their way through with the minimum amount of work they've got. I clearly remember the computer presentations that meant dredging under bridges in Somerset would not adversely affect the flow of the rivers. That computer prediction went on being quoted for 15 years until in 2016 or 2014, sorry, basically the rain heavens opened, everything coincided and Somerset went underwater. This is my worry, that we have a long-term lack of funding for maintenance. And I find it ridiculous that the Environment Agency are getting a lot of money for capital works and neglecting or having to neglect their basic. And when maintenance work, because councils went through this 20 years ago, councils went for a partnership approach. And I think in some of these ways, if we know that there are certain things the Environment Agency cannot do, there might well be ways of getting that work done other ways and by other sources. So I really think we do need that information from the Environment Agency to allow us to work in a partnership way. We've got drainage boards equipped with full competent staff. We've got our own flood risk and management team, who, although small, do remarkably good work and are very focused. And I think we've got to find a way of drawing together, because in some cases there are volunteers who could actually do work as well. Thank you.
Thank you then, and I think, Annemieke, you're going to finish the immediate.
Finish up, yes, absolutely. I do thank Councillor Burden for those comments, and I absolutely share his concern. It is a really big concern. I forgot to mention in my little words just now that I do actually have a meeting in the diary with the Environment Agency and Simon Bunn, and it's an afternoon, and we'll have a lot of time to discuss all these issues, and I will come back to Councillor Burden as soon as we do get a list of those assets, and I'm sure that we were going to have some more meetings in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Flood note, let's move on. Any urgent business? None. Reports and matters, I think we're done. Thank you very much, everybody. Safe journey home.